Greetings, beloved. Ooh, our God is so good. He's got me on a measure of faith again. So this is what, number 3? Yes, number 3 on a measure of faith. So he told me to tell you this, right? Y'all know we still at Romans 12:3. And I feel like he just wants me to keep giving you examples of what that looks like. So, and this one is about a conversation that I had with my sister. So my sister lives in Texas and I live in California, right? And she was renting a room in a house, right? And things were going great, and she was doing that for a long time, right? And then one of the in the house, the owner allowed someone else to rent a room in the house, right? But this person was causing a lot of friction and conflict for my sister. See, listen, when God's ready for you to move, sometimes he has to bring stuff to make you move, because sometimes we don't move because we can't see it, and we'll sit in that place and he'll have to do something to eject us out of that so that we could get to the next level, to get to the next blessing, right? So my sister, she had been talking about what she wanted to move, but she kept saying, I can't afford it. I don't have the money. She kept saying, I can't afford it. I don't have the money. My budget isn't right. I got to get these things together before I can move. So God moves this person into this place, right? And this woman is a hot mess. My sister said that one night she woke up and she said she was asleep in her own room. And she woke up, and when she woke up, room was dark. This chick was over her, going in her closet to steal some shoes out of her closet. And when my sister called me, of course she caught her on it, but when my sister called me, she was like, Jackie, can you believe blah, blah, blah? I said, I told you, God said it's time for you to go. And she goes, well, I don't, what she said, she goes, well, I don't have the money. I said, God didn't say you had the money. I said, do you believe God? And she goes, yeah, I believe God. I said, okay, then pack up. I said, because it's time for you to go. And she's like, where I'm going? I said, doesn't matter. First, you got to pack. So just do the first step, pack, right? And so then maybe a few weeks later, she called me and she was complaining about something else that happened with the girl in the room. And I was like, listen, I go, don't talk to me anymore until you have packed up and everything's packed, right? Everything's packed and in storage. So a couple weeks later, she calls me back and she goes, okay, everything is packed. Everything is in storage. She goes, all I have is, I have a little travel kit in my car. She goes, and I have and I have the clothes that I folded in a little thing inside my trunk, so when I go in there and sleep and all my stuff, I carry my little tote like she was, moving, right? I carry my little tote in there like she's in a hotel, and then she leaves. And she goes, so now everything's in storage. Now what do? I said, go look for your place. And she goes, huh? I said, go look for your place. And she goes, okay. I said, listen, don't limit yourself. I said, because right now you can't afford anything anyway. So go look for what you want. Go look for what you want. That's what I told her. And she goes, okay. So she starts looking at apartments, and she goes to all these different apartment complexes, and she comes back to me and she calls me and she goes, oh my God, I found one that I really like. So she's FaceTiming me and she's showing me this apartment, right? And I said, oh wow. I said, that's beautiful. I said, she goes, well, they have a 1-bedroom. They have a 1-bedroom with an additional room, and then they have a 2-bedroom, And I said, well, what do you want? And she goes, well, I only think I can afford the 1-bedroom. I said, you can't afford any of it. I said, so why don't you go for what you want, right? But see, the enemy tells us in our head that this is all that we can do based on our salary. And we start believing those lies instead of walking in the measure of faith that God's given us, trusting God that regardless to what it looks like, regardless to what man says, he has a way of working this out, right? So she goes down. She goes, no, I think I'll just go stay with this 1-bedroom. I'm good with this. I'm happy to have my 1-bedroom, have this, I have that. It's good, right? And I said, okay. I said, so go down and fill out the paperwork. And she goes, well, I don't know if there's a down payment. I said, go down and fill out the paperwork. So she went down, she filled out the paperwork. 2 days later, they called her and told her that she had been accepted. Now, mind you, she thought her credit was bad. She thought her credit was bad. And she was like, my credit's not good. All this stuff, right, was going against her. But God, listen, she said they called her and she called me. She was like, oh my God, they called me. They told me I could move in. And get this, they had a special going on, so she didn't have to pay any down payment to move in. She didn't have to pay several months rent, right? They had this special going on where she didn't have to pay for, I think it was like 90 days. She didn't have to pay rent, and she didn't have to pay a down payment to move in. Now, just think if she hadn't moved. Just think if she hadn't moved. And look at what God had to do to get her up out of that place, because he had a blessing sitting for her. Now, I want to tell you this. She went to an apartment, but I bet money, has she went to a house, has she went to a condo, God would have made a way. But he went based off the measure of the level of her faith that she was working with. Because within that measure that God's given her, it's higher than that. But because that's where she was at that time, then that's where he blessed her. You have to move with faith, trusting God, saying, God, I trust you, and I am moving in the measure of faith that I have. God, I don't know if this is enough, but that's all I got, so that's what I'm trusting you in. That, my sisters and brothers, is the message that God wanted me to give to you. Walk in the measure of faith that he's called you to. Listen, I am going through that right now. We are looking for some homes, some places that we've got to move. We got some things that we got to do. And look, our finances aren't set up so we can buy homes right now. But you know what? I'm moving in the measure of faith that God's given me. And I'm like, God, I trust you. I don't know how you're going to work it out, but I am walking in faith and trusting you. All right, family, God bless you. I will see y'all in another post. Love you. Oh, and by the way, if you guys get the opportunity, follow me, and so that we let TikTok know, so that we let Instagram know that this is what we want to see, and that you are enjoying the messages that God is giving me to give to you. So follow me. I really appreciate it. All right, thank you guys, and I'll see y'all in